do something for Star Wars Day and Comic Book Day, which fell on the same day yesterday, but I couldn't do it yesterday because I was doing a lot of other stuff and having fun. So sorry I couldn't sit down and just talk into the ether for a few hours while there was stuff that I wanted to do. And plus, I had got up late, so that started the whole day off wrongly. But still worked out at the end of the day. And like I said, went out, got some free comics from Comic Book Day. Did some. I watched Attack of the Clones for Star Wars Day. Something I rarely do is watch prequels. And since Phantom Menace was released yesterday for its 25th anniversary on Star Wars Day, I was like, well, let me go watch my favorite of the three prequel movies. For most people, it's Revenge of the of the of this or the it's Revenge of the Sith, but I don't actually like that movie. So the whole topic of this, guys, is Comic Book Day and Star Wars Day. So hopefully I'll get some people that will jump in to the live stream. Last time I tried to do a live stream where you could ask me anything, no one jumped in, so I ended it uh after like a half an hour. But hopefully people will jump in. I couldn't do it yesterday again because it was stuff I wanted to do on May the 4th. And we always say May the 4th be with you as part of our mantra for Star Wars Day. And like I said, it was cool because it also fell on Free Comic Book Day, which hasn't happened in a couple of years. We also, as Star Wars nerds, also call May the 5th Revenge of the 5th. So for people who miss Star Wars Day on May the 4th, this is May May 5th or Revenge of the 5th. So I'm doing this stuff on Revenge of the 5th. And of course, for those who celebrate, it's Cinco de Mayo. Hi, Kayla. How are you? Um, and if people didn't see my YouTube short that I did yesterday, I'm gonna show some of my winnings from well, not winnings, but some of the stuff I picked up for Free Comic Book Day. There was a ton of comic books there for free that you could get, but I only got the ones that I was interested in. I used to get all of them. Uh, hey Nada, how are you? I hope I said that right, Nada. Ramo, oh, you just retracted it. I think you were asking me where am I from. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. If that was what you were asking. K. Dot Drake. I actually I, did I do it. I think I did a YouTube short talking about that. To me, uh, to me, Christ Walker, I think is all that beef is completely fake. If I did lyrically, I would choose Kendrick, but I'm not going to lie. I like some of Drake's music, but of course, some of his music is going to be good because it's apparently ghost written by a lot of folks. So whatever. But I don't like personally. I don't like Drake. I think he's corny. I mean, the whole song started from the bottom. Now we're here. Started from the bottom of what? Upper middle class Canada with your rich Jewish white daddy. I don't like Drake. Plain and simple. um, oh, greetings from Russia. Okay, all right. How are you? Kiefer said I believe it's fake too. It's a WWE beef. Like I said, I grew up in the era of '90s hip hop. So to me, unless someone is getting shot, someone's getting robbed, someone's getting stabbed in the studio, or someone's baby mama is getting smashed, it's fake. Drake is a bottle. Right, right, right. Fix my teeth before I. Well, here's the thing, TJM. I can fight. Drake can't, and neither can you. So anyway, let me show you guys some of my comic books that I got. And again, I shout out to Third Eye Comics. I'm not being sponsored. No one's paying me to say Third Eye Comics. I just like the place because it's not too many mom and pop comic book stores left. Amazon and Barnes and Nobles have kind of put a lot of them out of business. And I'm not gonna lie, I definitely love going to Barnes and Noble. They have a huge comic book section for comic books and manga, right? I love going there. I love shopping off Amazon. But what I won't do is I won't shop on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles and then go to a mom and pop store and expect them to price match. Because my friend and I were having a conversation about that yesterday at the Third Eye store. That he saw a complete set of the Demon Slayer manga set. I didn't know they even end. I didn't know the manga had ended. The anime is still going on. I think the anime is somewhere halfway through where the manga is, but um, in any case, um, I'm sorry, I'm losing track. And I'm going to get to these comments too, guys. But in any case, he saw the whole manga set on Amazon, cheaper than the store, and he said, "Well, I'm just gonna get it off Amazon." I was like, "I don't blame you." It's like I think it was like $25 cheaper or something like that. He saw it, and that's the entire set, right? But he was like, "I wonder," because he was saying, "I wonder if they would try to compete." And I was like, "Nah, don't do that." I said that's not fair to the stores to try to make them try to price match the low the low prices that people can get on Amazon. I was like, I don't have anything against shopping on Amazon because I do it all the time, but it's going to be unfair to ask even a small franchise like Third Eye, because they are a franchise now. I think they're now in Pennsylvania, they're in Virginia. They started the original store started in Annapolis, Maryland, near where I live, but they have stores all over Maryland. They have one in Southern Maryland, and I forgot the name of that town in Southern Maryland. And they have one near my alma mater in College Park, Maryland. They have one in Pennsylvania, like right off, like right across the border, and they have one in Virginia somewhere. And I think there's another store. But anyway, enough about Third Eye. This little sticker, this their logo. They actually had a partnership with a local tattoo parlor near their comic book store, so they were actually giving discounts on tattoos for Third Eye shoppers, and I think they were giving it off a huge discount if you got this tattooed on you. Now, I'm not getting the store logo tattooed on me. In fact, I have no tattoos, for those who don't know. But yeah, this is the Third Eye logo, right? And this is their whole schedule for free comic book, not just for yesterday, but they have one. I know you guys can't see it because it's backwards. So they have one next week on the 11th for superhero comic day. So it's a free superhero comic just for that day. 2 weeks from now, on the 18th, they have one free sci-fi fantasy comic book day. Hey, I'm coming all these days. And then the third week from now is free kids comic day. Now, again, my niece and nephew are grown, so they're probably not going to appreciate that anymore. But I used to get them a whole bunch of free comics, which I'm not sure if they read, but they seemed like they liked them, even though their mother said they didn't read them. And then 4 weeks from now, on the 1st of June, they're having a free graphic novel day. And I've explained this before in a stream, but for those who don't know the difference between comic books, graphic novels, and TPs, it's so basically nowadays they call everything a graphic novel when it's a complete volume of a comic book, but that's not usually what graphic novel used to mean. A graphic novel used to be an entire contained story outside of the canon comic book series. So, like, say if you had Batman, right? It'll be a story outside of what's going on in the canon continuity, right? Say like Son of the Demon or something like that, or it could be like a Elseworlds thing. For those who know what Elseworlds is. So anyway, a free graphic novel is definitely worth grabbing because those are usually worth about $20-$30. All right, now let me get back to the comments. So someone named Amaris claimed they sent me a Tinder message. Say, hey, sweetie, I sent you a message on Tinder. You haven't replied yet, so I'll ask you here. Are we still doing the Diddy thing tonight, or should I cancel the Cash App? So this is a troll. First of all, I'm married. Two, I'm not. Two, I'm not gay. Three, you're kind of corny. So, and four, I can fight. Um, P. Ronald says, I know it's random, but I need advice. Do you think I should move to ATL? That's Atlanta for those who don't know. Do you recommend it? I found a pretty big cheap house over there. I'm from Chicago. Job is no problem because my job is online. Okay, so first of all, I'm originally from Illinois myself. Well, I was born here in Baltimore, moved to Chicago as a kid. Not the Chicago, the city proper, but outside of Chicago. I lived in University Park and Park Forest. Um, uh, P. Rama would know what I'm talking about as far as University Park and Park Forest. They were in like Cook County, outside of the city, right? Uh, First of all, if you're still living in Chicago, I would definitely advise getting out of there. ATL is pretty much better. Now, as far as you asking what, now as it depends on why you're moving there. Like, so if you if your job is remote, so you can work from anywhere, I would actually recommend being a passport bro or former passport bro. Consider actually going overseas. Your money will go much farther if you can work remotely, or what we call a digital nomad. Like some of these places, I don't know what your preference is as far as dating goes, but the Philippines is great for expats or expatriates because your money goes so much further, and then one of the national languages is English, so language won't be a barrier there. That's why a lot of retirees, expats, and veterans move to the Philippines. But there's other places too that you can move and your money will stretch farther. Places in the Caribbean, like the Dominican Republic. Some people have moved to Colombia. I don't recommend it just because I think it's a volatile country. Like I know that the women are beautiful and a lot of guys love going there, but it's dangerous. A lot of the women are hip to these guys and they try to set them up, especially through dating apps. Or there is a terrorist organization that used to have sort of a treaty with the government to keep things civil, but that's starting to break down. So I don't think it's a good place for Americans to be right now. You know, so caveat emptor. But if you want to go to ATL, go ahead. Like it's cheaper down there. It's safer than Chicago. I don't know what part of Chicago you're from. I mean, if you're from like northern Chicago, like the area where like politicians live, like the Obamas and stuff like that, that's not a bad part of the city. But if you're from like south side of Chicago or somewhere else, I would probably recommend getting out of Chicago if you can. So it's up to you. What I would do, maybe just weigh the pros and cons of moving to ATL versus staying in Chicago. And remember, because you are able to work remotely, you can be a digital nomad and you don't even have to live in the United States at all. So if you don't have a passport, get one and consider not just ATL, but maybe living outside the states as well. Okay. What's next week? I, I, I'm sorry, IOTA numbers? I don't understand that. Were you referring to the comic book stuff I was talking about or something else? I'm sorry, Chris. Sana Soweto, a question for you. Why are you gay? Spear Checker says what? Okay, that's what I thought. Man, some of y'all on some, yeah, pause. That's all I'm gonna say. Pause. My pronouns, glad you asked. What are my pronouns? Dark Knight and Ninja. That's and Nakamoi. Those are my pronouns. You can call me the Dark Knight. You can call me a ninja. Or you can call me a Nakmoy. Those are my pronouns, bro. Yeah, Christ Walker. I know somewhere people. I just let them. I just let them go at it because in any live stream that's how it goes. But in any case, I'll get back to the Free Comic Book Day and Star Wars Day. And like I said, Star Wars Day is huge for me. Pause. But um, as I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, like I was literally born in 1977, the year that Star Wars came out. So I'm born in so what's called the Star Wars generation, or is also called the um, they call us Zennials, people born between 1977 and 1983. So they're sort of like a, a hybrid of the last of the Gen X and the first of the Millennials. They call them Zennials because Gen X went from 1965 to 1980, and Millennials started from 1981 and went on to 1996. Yeah, like both like 15-year generations each. And so that microcosm of 1977 to 1983 have more in common with each other than they do with either the earlier Gen X or the later millennials. So we've been called the Star Wars generation because that's the time that the original trilogy came out, 1977, 1980, and 1983. Star Wars: A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi was the first one that I actually saw in the movies in its original theater release. Obviously, I was too young to see the first two in their theatrical releases, but I saw them on HBO, how they originally came out before George Lucas edited the shit out of them. And now I'm gonna get back to these comments too, guys. But like I said, I'm definitely a Star Wars cat. I have Star Wars stuff all over here. Maybe I can. Well, if you see my videos, you guys have seen some of my my collectibles. I don't want to take them out right now. One of the comic books released was one just for Star Wars for Free Comic Book Day. This and Marvel makes these. Marvel, when the original movie came out, Marvel was the original one licensed to make comic books for Star Wars, and then afterwards they lost that license and they went to Dark Horse. And Dark Horse made some of the actually made some of the best stuff when it came to like Star Wars comics before that license reverted back to Marvel Comics. So Dark Horse Comics did a lot of good stuff for the Star Wars expanded universe, which is now called Star Wars Legends, after Disney bought out Lucasfilm from George Lucas and took everything from the expanded universe and said it was now no longer canon. So, but there was other comics I got too as well. Here's a Transformers one made by Skybound Entertainment. I think that's actually an imprint under Image Comics. So Image Comics is one of the big five comic book companies. There's DC Comics, Marvel Comics, um, Dark Horse Comics, Image Comics, and IDW Comics. Those like are the big five. And so this is an imprint. An imprint is usually like they do. An imprint is usually like they're part of the comic books company, but the properties in that imprint aren't part of that larger universe within that comic book publishing. So here's a DC one, Absolute Power, the prequel. So DC is going to release a new mega crossover across all their books called Absolute Power. This is the prequel to that beginning. Okay, you can see Amanda, what's her name? Yeah, you've seen her in multiple stuff if you watch DC Comics movies or the animation or the TV shows that used to come on the Arrowverse on CW. So, yeah. This is a Spider-Man Ultimate Universe comic for Free Comic Book Day. guess he has a lot of stuff with Iron Man and Captain America, the Green Goblin, and Doctor Doom. Which I hope they do Doctor Doom right well in the new Fantastic Four movie, because there's not been one Fantastic Four movie that has done Doctor Doom correctly, and he's like one of the best supervillains in Marvel, in all of comic books, really. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't know what this is pertaining to, but I guess it's part of the canon universe. So a lot of times in a free comic book day, they are giving you a sneak peek at what's going to happen in that next maximums or maxi series of comic books for that continuity. Some of these I put in plastic because I plan on keeping these, whereas the other ones I'm not sure yet. But the ones I put in a casing are ones I know I'm going to keep. So this is actually a manga released on Comic Book Day, One Piece, and it looked like it's given the backstory to Ace. Ace was the brother of the main character in One Piece. And just to be honest, I hated One Piece when I first heard about it, because it looked ridiculous looking at the animation style, the illustration. Once I actually started watching the show, I was like, this shit is good. I think that's all of them. And then this one wasn't a free comic book. I actually bought this. This is Captain America #1. Not the original Captain America #1 from the 40s. This is the new reboot. So I wanted to get that because it looked, the cover art just looked awesome. And Captain America is one of my favorite superheroes. And it's written by Michael J. Straczynski. I think that's his full name. He's a awesome comic book writer. Okay. So, anywho, I'm gonna get back to the comments. Johnny West says most people don't realize until they go how freaking huge Chicago is. Yeah, Chicago is huge. It used to be the second largest city in the country until LA superseded it. But it was, they used to literally call it second city because it was the second largest city in the country. It's still the third largest. But Chicago, it's like a Midwest New York, and that's no slight to neither Chicago nor New York. But that's how I always felt about Chicago. It was like a Midwest New York. As a kid, it was funny. Like every time I saw a movie on TV, I always for some reason I always assumed that the city was in Chicago, rather the city was Chicago in that movie. Every time I watched something as a kid, because growing up in Illinois, my reference point to anything city-wise was Chicago. P. Ramos says I have many family members you have a lot of members in Atlanta. That's the main reason, because the house is cheap. Some Americans go to Portugal nowadays, is what I heard. Portugal's cool. I don't know about Portugal, but I know that Spain is actually pretty cheap. And since they're both on the Iberian Peninsula and share a lot of commonalities, both cultural and socio-political, they might both be cheap. Wherever your interest is, I would research it. One of the resources you can look at for accurate information about another country is called the CIA World Factbook. For those who don't know, the CIA puts out like a sort of like an encyclopedia of information about every country in the world. Every year it's updated. It's called the CIA World Factbook. It lets you know about the culture, the geography, the politics, the economics, all of that stuff. So it gives you a good starting point to learn about a country, then you can delve further, right? So do that. But if you want to go to ATL, I would say go ahead. My only thing I was hedging about when I was talking about ATL is the fact the dating scene isn't great there. That's what I've heard from a lot of people living in ATLs, that the dating scene is kind of whack out there. But outside of that, ATL might be the move. So if that's where you want to go ahead. And yeah, the house would be cheap. But keep in mind also that just because you can buy the house, but you don't have to live there. You can use it as an investment property as well. So you could buy the house and then either, rent it out or do whatever, but you can use it as an investment property instead of just living there and then live your life overseas. So now you got two streams of income. You have your job, which you can work remotely, right? And then you have the investment income coming from your house in Atlanta. So just a thought. But if you want to live there, I'll say go for it. I would definitely say get out of Chicago, especially if you live in a rough spot. So that's that's what I would say. Spiritual Awakening says stay away from big cities up north. Yeah, most of them are kind of bad. Not all of them. The problem is that a lot of the northern cities are within what they call the Rust Belt, right? Like all these places up until the 70s were big manufacturing cities, and a lot of those shut down between the 70s and 80s, turning these places into shitholes. Like Baltimore, for instance, I think they were known for like what was it, Baltimore Steel or something like that, and they had the B&O Railroad. So when a lot of those industries collapsed back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of those northern cities became the Rust Belt, and they became, you know, places of urban decay, crime, and violence. So yeah, the northern cities. I'm sure there's some northern cities that are all right. And let's be clear, if you have money, any place is good. But for most of us, it's yeah. A lot of us are moving out of the north. I see a lot of people moving to Florida and Texas. To be honest, people leaving the people leaving the East Coast. People are leaving California. I've heard that Florida is now the most expensive state to live because so many people have fled from their states to Florida, gentrifying Florida and making it more expensive to live, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. Puerto Rico's close, good taxes. Oh, good, yeah, that's that's good to know. And as part of the U.S., you don't have to get a passport. And also that's another thing, guys. So you guys know there's a bunch of U.S. territories that you can go to that have exotic culture, exotic women, exotic food, and it's still part of the United States. American Samoa, Guam, the Mariana Islands, and of course, Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Uh, I'm missing one other place in the Pacific Islands, but the Marshall is it the Marshall Islands? I'm not sure if that's inhabited or not, but yeah, there's another place. But hey, yeah, you can definitely see a lot of the parts of the country that a lot of people don't go to, where it's full of like you know tropical sun, pretty women, nice food. You're sitting on an island chilling. They're sort of like come back to the Star Wars again. They're sort of like the outer rim of the United States. So I recommend traveling if you have the wherewithal to do it. That one girl said, "Hi, it's my birthday today. I turned 37. Happy birthday, that one girl. Enjoy your birthday. Um, make sure you have some fun." Little crazy man says ninja. Thank you. And she says she totally agrees with me again. Thank you. Let's see. Indecisive says, "For what is the purpose if you are not willing to self-sacrifice for your purpose? Can you be a little bit more specific, or is that just some general wisdom you're dropping on folks?" Oh, Kennel Zoid is back. This guy, if for the rest of you guys in the live stream, this guy was a troll in a previous stream, so he's back to talk trash. And again, dude, you're saying fight me. Go to my socials if you really want to set up a fight. Again, challenging a guy who does Muay Thai to a fight is like wrestling a pig in mud. We love it. So don't threaten me with a good time, bro. Hey, Paul Dana says, I think you're wrong. The next maxi series will be future and past. We're no way to give. I'm just going by what I saw from, like I said, this free comic book day gives you stuff that's yet to happen. It's sort of like a sneak preview. And, so when I never heard of Absolute Power. So when I saw it, I've read that it was a prelude to the next DC Comics crossover. And it even says it here, the prelude to the next event. So future and past, I think, is the current thing going on. I'm thinking this is building up, and DC Comics is weird anyway with their crossovers. You'll have so many tie-ins, and future and past might tie into Absolute Power, or it might just be its own thing, and then that ends, and then immediately they go into Absolute Power. Personally, I'm kind of tired of all the crossovers. Like the first crossovers were good, like Infinite. Crisis on Infinite Earths, which they're currently doing in the DC animated universe. Well, the spinoff called the Tomorrowverse, for those who are super nerdy about it. So they already did part one and part two of Crisis on Infinite Earths. But they're gonna have the third one coming out soon. That was like the best comic book crossover ever, and this is the one that started all of them for like all the comic books. DC did that huge crossover basically to consolidate all their different properties into one continuity that new readers could follow. But I don't know. You could be right. Like I said, I haven't followed what they're doing in years just because it's too confusing. And I'm not gonna read all the tie-ins and preludes and all that sort of stuff. I just read the stuff that I'm interested in, which is generally just Batman. Amarius saying my favorite superhero is a lesbian fellow. A lesbian wouldn't be a fellow, but keep trolling. Okay, Milk says, okay, I'm back. What country is the strongest based off logistics and overall power and its capability to enforce its power all over the globe? I know the right answer. I'm just saying if you do. If you do, then no need to ask me. That's above my pay grade, bro. I don't, and plus, I don't even know what that even means and what context. Like, in what context are we talking about strongest based off logistics and stuff like that? I don't know what you're talking about. Like, the U.S. is the largest superpower in the world, with China coming in right behind us, and then you have Russia. So I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't know what the point of it that is anyway. You guys need to stop with the stop doing drugs. What's up from Miami, Liberty City? What's up? Wise up? Wait, Liberty City? That's real? I'm still thinking of it from the video game. I didn't know that was. No, I'm sorry. That was Vice City, but wasn't Vice City based off of Liberty City? I don't know, but in anywho, thanks for watching. David Bunch of Numbers says, "Bro, looks like the guy who plays War Machine." People really think I look like Don Cheadle. I've gotten so many people like over the years saying I look like different folks. I remember as a kid, someone said I look like Big Daddy Kane, and I didn't know if that was an insult or not because one of my cousins' family, well, my, I guess you can say step cousin once said that, and someone else, and my stepmom was like, "Why you call him Big Daddy Kane?" She's like, "What you mean?" She's like, "No, I think he looks handsome." I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you," because I didn't know whether calling me Big Daddy Kane was an insult or not. You guys who are millennials and Gen Z, you probably don't know who Big Daddy Kane is. Huge hip hop pioneer. But he was like dark skinned. He was like, dude used to dance while he was rapping, all this sort of stuff. You may have seen him in some movies. Not any movies recently. Not since the 90s or early 2000s, I don't think. And I think in the 2000s, these were like straight to DVD movies he might have been in. But It was him. Who else have I been compared to? The biggest one was Omar Epps. People used to always say I look like Omar Epps ever since the movie Juice came out. And then like his other movies like Love and Basketball and stuff like that. I don't think I look anything like Omar Epps, but even one of my homeboys kept saying I look like Omar Epps. I don't see it. Then it was the guy. He used to be on a soap opera, and he was in that movie Set It Off with like Jada Pinkett and Queen Latifah. I can't remember his name, but he was also a character in Agents of Shield when he actually played the Chinese girl's the Chinese chick husband. And I've actually met her at a comic book convention. She's sweet. She's tiny too. And she was 50. She did not look it. She looked good. She would have still got it. um, but I saw her. I think that's either my first comic book convention or my second one. Oh, sorry, I got like a lash stuck in my eye, guys. Sorry, but I don't see the Don Cheadle. Maybe the nose, but other than that, I don't think I look like Don Cheadle. His nose is a little bit wider than mine. We're probably about the same complexion, more or less. But I wouldn't be mad at it. Like, dude can act. He got money, so and he doesn't. You don't see him in the news for doing anything dumb. So I'll take it. But I don't think I look anything like him. My a Filipino ex girlfriend said I look like one of the NBA stars. I think she said I look like Paul Pierce or something like that. I don't see Paolo like Paul Pierce. I think that's his name. Sorry, I'm not a sports guy unless we're talking about like kickboxing and Muay Thai. Like I said, Milk said I've been using the CIA World Fact Book for some of my projects for school. That's what's up. Again, like I said, I'm sorry I didn't know what you were referring to as far as the world superpower, like logistics and all that other sort of stuff. That was a little ahead of me. But again, like I said, as far as depending on what we're talking about, I would just say, the US is the biggest superpower in the world, like obviously. But if you're talking about other things, there's other metrics you might want to measure a country by. And then some of those things we fall quite short, especially when it comes to like education or average IQ and stuff like that. Definitely not. So someone else asked me about Don Cheadle. Bro, Don Cheadle would not be on a live stream right now. He has better things to do. Oh, I assume. I mean, the last MCU thing he did on Secret Invasion sucked, but that wasn't his fault. That was the writers and producers' fault to make him one of the scrolls in the most obvious plot twist ever. I've yeah, I've been overseas. My second home is the Philippines. I go back and forth between them. I have a house there with my wife. But I've been to multiple countries in both Europe and Asia. Not so much Latin America or Africa yet, but I have a few. Well, to be honest, none of them in Latin America or Africa are in my wish list. Well, my bucket list yet, but I definitely want to see as many places as possible so I can get those stamped in my passport in my passport. And I definitely want to hit. I want I want to hit every continent, including Antarctica. They even have a marathon, I think, every year in Antarctica. I'm probably not gonna do the marathon, but I'll probably do one of those little cruises that you can take. I think it goes from Argentina to Antarctica, so I would like to do that so I can be like um, the exclusive folks who hit all seven continents. But the Philippines is the main place I go overseas. But I'm mainly in Southeast Asia. That's my favorite part of the world um, currently. And parts of Europe are cool too. How long have you been training or competing? So I don't compete, but I've been training literally since I was 7 years old. I told this story in some other videos that I've done, but it wasn't a choice. Like when I was 7, my parents said I had to learn martial arts. Sorry for that. One of my notifications is popping up, but yeah. Um, my parents said you had to learn martial arts and you had to learn to swim. So I didn't know what to take. They said I could either take judo or karate. And originally I was scared of karate because I'm like, I'm gonna get beat up. Again, this is the mind of a 7-year-old. So I said, I'm gonna take judo. I got probably beat up worse in judo. Like I remember there was classes I would go to where the instructors just practiced throwing me the entire session. And I practiced my break falls and stuff like that. And then it was fun days that we got to roll with each other. So that's big with BJJ is rolling. And some people don't know that we actually roll in judo as well. But it's just that Newaza, or the ground fighting, isn't the main part of judo as it is with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where Newaza is the main part of BJJ, where Newaza and judo is just part of it. So I started off in judo. Then I started begging my parents to let me do karate. And I remember I almost started in this karate place when I was living in Illinois. And this just shows how Gen X and people from the 80s are completely different from now. Because this instructor was off the hook. He probably would be he'd probably be in jail nowadays. Because we went to his class with my stepfather and I, and he said, yeah, we can get him started. He said, just let you know. He said, he's gonna come home with a lot of bruises and scrapes and some, maybe some minor injuries, maybe a black eye here and there, maybe a broken bone. He said because we trained hard. He said, but it pays off. And I'm like, what the fuck? Broken bones, black eyes, bruises. What kind of Cobra Kai type shit is this? But I'm not gonna lie, I wanted to do it. I don't think my stepfather was down for that, so he didn't let me start. So I didn't end up doing a striking style till like a year or two later when I moved back to Maryland and started at Kim's Karate. People from Maryland and particularly the Baltimore area wouldn't be familiar with Kim's Karate. Which is funny because it's not actually karate; it's taekwondo, a Korean striking style. But Kim's Karate was like the McDonald's of martial arts franchises in Maryland back in the 80s and 90s. Uh, and then later, I started taking Jeet Kune Do. That's when I was going to get my first taste of competing because the instructor said I should do Sanda, or back then it was still called Sancho, which is Chinese kickboxing. It's Chinese martial arts started within the Chinese military. It took like elements of like Muay Thai, boxing, and other things and made it their own sport and style because wushu obviously isn't fit for fighting. So they developed Sanshu back then, and like I said, what is called now Sanda. I was going to compete in that, but I left the JKD class before I could start competing. Uh, I went to a boxing gym. I went to an MMA gym. I went to a Muay Thai gym in Thailand. I haven't competed yet. I've, I fought on the street, but I don't count that because I hate when people try to use um, street fighting as a source of credibility. I don't believe in that because there's no way you can verify a street fight. Like unless it was caught on video, there's no way to ascertain if someone actually was in street fights or not, and even if they did, whether they won. And plus, someone who claimed they've been in hundreds of street fights doesn't sound like a good person to be around, right? Like, why are you always getting into fights on the street? That means you're a difficult person or someone looking for trouble. So I don't count the street fights that I've done, but I have been in a few. I haven't competed professionally yet. I was considering doing it 2 years ago and met up with someone from a Kyokushin karate class, but when I went there, it wasn't what I thought it was. I actually did a video on that too. I thought he was going to connect me with some people inside the industry, like, because presumably he knew some people in the martial arts, like Hollywood industry. And so I came there to spar with him and the people there to actually show my bona fides so that maybe they could get me connected with some of these folks. He it, that didn't really happen. And then he asked me, so why do you want to do MMA in your 40s? I said, actually, I'm not here to do MMA. He said, why are you here? I said, well, I just want to do a few professional, well, not professional, I want to do a few, semi-professional fights to buttress my credibility as a martial arts coach. But I'm not here to make a living out of becoming a competitive fighter. Hats off to anyone who does, because I know how hard that is. I know how, not from personal experience, but from folks who I know train and compete in MMA. I know how hard that lifestyle is. So hats off to you, Hancho MMA. If you do that, like I said, I do want to do a few fights. I hopefully I can go back to Thailand because um, they have a 3 month visa for people who want to do a student visa there in Thailand. And they can go to a gym and train for 3 months and do a few fights, which in Thailand they call those smokers. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Smokers are like, these semi-professional fights, not as very well organized, but it's a good starting point for someone who wants to, you know, get their feet wet in actual Thai boxing. Diddy says, "Hey, bro," that's crazy though. Milk is back says, "Yes, finally everybody says like China or North Korea or like Russia are more powerful than us." Thank you, bro. It makes me so happy to hear that you actually know true. I, I, is it I don't know. Milk, is it controversial to know that the U.S. is the biggest world power? I mean, it just common sense to me. Like China is our rival, and they are the up and coming. Like they're the second biggest world power. Like obviously because we're having a cold war between them, but I don't think there's any mistake of the fact that we're still the biggest. Like back during the original Cold War, from the 50s to 1991, I would say the Soviet Union and the U.S. were equally meshed in many different metrics. Probably not economically. Economically, I think U.S. had the upper hand, but as far as influence and other things, I think it was about equal. So I don't. That shouldn't be hard to figure out unless people just have a axe to grind against the U.S. And you can have an axe to grind against the U.S. without denying, I don't know, facts. So Diddy saying, bro, do you like house parties? Diddy asks you to go to a party, you gotta tell Diddy, nah, Diddy. David Bunch of Numbers says we all know Russia's military capability. Do we though? They had the highest stockpile of nukes, second only to us, and that's and that's and that's disregarding the fact that they, when the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union dissolved, a lot of those nukes got sold to these other countries, and some of the countries that were formerly part of the Soviet Union still retained those nukes. Matter of fact, one of the issues with Ukraine was the United States had a treaty with them that if they didn't hold on to their nuclear weaponry, that we would be at their defense, which is why we're in this quagmire with them, with Russia right now. So I don't want to get into that, but I've talked about that in other videos. Um, Asis Mahmood says, hi, what's up, Asis? Hope I'm saying that correctly. Is your dad in prison, bro? I know him. No, you don't. I don't know where you even got that. So I was with you for a second, but now I see you're just a troll. So get your dumb ass out. I'm Sakin. I think you were saying assalamu alaikum. If that's what you're trying to say, wa alaikum salam. David Munchnumber says I miss Biggie. Definitely, that's still my favorite rapper. I don't care what happens to Puffy, but I'm gonna keep listening to Biggie regardless of what happens to Diddy, because Puffy's still my excuse me, Biggie's still my favorite rapper, because he hits every metric on who's the GOAT as far as rap goes. Guy, yeah, you're still going after Diddy. Yeah, you gotta tell Diddy no. um, Milk is saying it's not controversy. I'm just extremely patriotic, and it makes me sad to hear that people think that we're not the most powerful. That they're just, yeah. Some people are ill informed. Some people have their personal biases, stuff. You know, Milk. I don't know if you've seen my previous content, but I'm an Army vet, so um, I'm patriotic. Not maybe not in the same way that you are or other folks might be, but in my own way, I'm patriotic. Like I represent when I'm in other countries. Like I try to present a good image of American when I'm overseas. Not I don't want to be the quote unquote ugly American overseas. You know who makes some of the worst tourists now? Mainland Chinese folks. No diss to Chinese, but just mainland Chinese. They are now considered the worst tourists overseas. They've superseded Americans. Like when you're anywhere, like it got so bad. There's actually signs in some parts of the world. I forgot whether it was Switzerland or Sweden. They had a there was a train, a commuter train, and they had a separate cabin just for mainland Chinese. They told them to be in, which is a little bit racist, but they assigned a different cabin for them because they don't know how to behave overseas. Because well, I don't want to get into that, but yeah, they're considered the worst tourists. So like I said, I represent as far as like when I'm overseas as an American. um, Wise of 786 says true story. Uh, Pops put me in karate at the same age first day. Some kid threw a stomach kick at his sparring partner. Just so his gi was full of. Ugh, my first and last time there. Damn. So I mean, I don't know if that was I don't know if that was a lack of attention by the sensei, or it was just like a newbie in the class who didn't know how to act. That can be either or. Because like I said, in any given class, there's going to be accidents. Um, and for my own personal preference, that's why I don't teach classes. As a coach, I only teach one on one. I don't want to run a school, and I don't want to manage a school either. I just rather teach people one on one. Plus, to run a school, particularly in America, it usually has to cater to children, and I really don't want to teach them. I'm sorry. I think you gotta water down your stuff and stretch it out to make a successful martial arts studio in the U.S. and I don't want to do that. Milk says, well, Russia's nuclear warheads, half of them are Soviet era, so they are older and don't have as much as a punch of a modern day one. Also, they may have the most warheads, but they don't have a way. I didn't say they had the most warheads. I was just saying they had the largest cache. Second to us, we had the largest, but they had the second largest. And I was saying they had the second largest even after they sold off a lot of them, or some of them went missing in rogue states after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. As far as them being old and not having as much as a quote punch unquote, it only takes one to set off nuclear Armageddon. So it doesn't matter whether it doesn't pack a punch or not. One, especially with the Treaty of Mutually Assured Destruction, they launch one here, then we automatically fire one there. Nuclear Armageddon. Because even if you're not in the countries being hit, the nuclear fallout, and shout out to that that video game, and I watched the TV series on Amazon Prime. It's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, if you have enough nukes going off throughout the world, it's going to cause nuclear fallout across the globe. So it only takes one. I don't care how weak it is. If you set it off in the wrong place, which is a reason why we need to get the fuck out of Ukraine, because at any time Russia gets tired of dealing with Ukraine's bullshit or us helping them out, it's gonna trigger that. Like they were already talking about dropping smart bombs on Ukraine, and people here were saying, "Well, we need to do this and do that." No, the fuck we don't. like let's let's be clear. We know that we have operatives, and we don't have boots on the ground in the Ukraine, but we have operatives there. Obviously. I mean, for folks who know how those sorts of things work, but that's I mean, beyond that, we don't need boots on the ground. Air. We don't need aerial um, personnel. We. I'm just against us interfering in that because I see it as a civil war between Russia and Ukraine, and it was kind of our fault by trying to entertain Ukraine's thoughts of being part of NATO. Anyway, this went way far from comic book day and Star Wars day. But to speak of that, I'm gonna get back to that, and then I'll answer some more comments. So again, like I said, I was born in the Star Wars generation from 1977 to 1983, and I hate Disney Star Wars. I hate Disney Star Wars. And they don't seem to fundamentally understand anything about the original Star Wars mythos. George, for people who don't realize, Star Wars, the original trilogy and the prequels were very personal to George Lucas. Like Luke Skywalker was a personification of George Lucas. It even had his name, George Lucas, Luke Skywalker. That wasn't an accident. He he was a kid that grew up watching the space opera serials of the 30s, like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. Not the Flash Gordon that came out in 1980, but the original stuff from the 30s, like the old pulp fiction magazines. And they had like little black and white TV shows. And then Buck Rogers, the same thing. They had a show that came out in the 70s based on the old serials from the 30s too. So George Lucas wanted to do that. And there's a lot of most Star Wars nerds know all the different sort of influences in Star Wars that George Lucas used, especially a lot of the stuff from the samurai films from like the 50s and 60s that influenced Star Wars. Because obviously the Jedi are like people always call them space wizards. They're more space samurai. Well, they're sort of a admixture of samurais and medieval knights, which is why they call it Jedi Knights. And the Republic has been categorized as the old Republic, the High Republic, and then the Late Republic, sort of like the Middle Ages, like the early Middle Ages, the High Middle Ages, and the Late Middle Ages, right? So the films were influenced from, the medieval period and the feudal period of Japan with the samurai, specifically the J.A.C films, the samurai revenge films, which I think that's probably where he got the term Jedi from the J.A.C films, and also from the Italian. I mean, I'm sorry, not Italian, the spaghetti westerns of the era, like Clint Eastwood and all that sort of stuff. That influenced his movies. Obviously, Dune. Like Dune was such a huge influence in it that the writer of the Dune novels, Frank Herbert, almost sued George Lucas for plagiarism. Nowadays, there's no way George Lucas could have got away with using so much content from another IP without being sued. But this was in 1976 when he did that because he first did a novelization of the movie before the movie came out, and it made clear that it was about Luke Skywalker, who was originally called Luke Starkiller. Then they changed his name to Luke Skywalker. And it was personified in him. He was a guy who wanted to go off planet Tatooine, where it was like he saw it as a like a place where nothing was happening, similar to how George Lucas viewed living in Modesto, California. Um, the there was a war going on at the time for George Lucas. It was Vietnam. He even explicitly said that he saw the rebels as a as an analog to the Viet Cong in the Vietnam War. He saw the established, although the establishment was in Star Wars, like this this intergalactic fascist um, government. It also had analogs with the Hollywood establishment. He saw them as the bad guys, and that he and his mentor Francis Ford Coppola as being like the people going against the system in Hollywood. So it was definitely a lot of influences there. Like I said, that were personal to George Lucas himself. Like Luke Skywalker was a personification of him in that movie. And in the prequels later on, Anakin Skywalker was also a personification of him. It was when you see him as a kid, that was a personification of George Lucas as a kid. Um, when he gets involved with Padme, that was sort of like George Lucas' relationship with his then wife, Marsha Lucas, even up to the point where he had a falling out with Francis Ford Coppola, similar to how Anakin has a falling out with Obi-Wan, seeing him as a traitor and trying to hold him back, similar to how George Lucas felt about Francis Ford Coppola. Um, the a lot of stuff, thinking that his wife had betrayed him, similar to like Francis Ford Coppola tried to hit on his wife at one point, and remember Anakin assumed thought that Obi-Wan was having an affair with Padme at one point, right? But his wife did not Anakin, George Lucas' wife, Marsha Lucas, did end up having an affair during their marriage, which led to their divorce. So there's a lot of stuff that happened personally in George Lucas' life that is reflected in the 6 movies that George Lucas did. So it was always very personal. It was never meant to be just another space opera like Star Trek, which is no diss to Star Trek, because George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, were friends. Actually, Gene Roddenberry helped finance Star Wars. So for all the nerds that fight between which is better, Star Trek or Star Wars, are thinking that Gene Roddenberry and George Lucas were rivals. No, they weren't. Gene Roddenberry helped George Lucas finance getting Star Wars made. But again, George Lucas didn't want it to be this sprawling space opera. He wanted it to be a family saga, and he saw it um, more as science fantasy than science fiction. For those who don't know, like the difference between science fantasy and science fantasy is it's sort of um, like the elements you would find in like a fantasy like Lord of the Rings or Chronicles of Narnia or Game of Thrones, but put in a futuristic sort of setting. That's science fantasy. So that's what he always meant it to be, as opposed to like a high tech sci fi type movie or series like Star Trek. I'll get back to the comments. uh, so Wise Up 786 says it was a karate school in Liberty City, Miami, straight hood. Those those old, like I said, those I think you're like maybe around my age. Wise Up 786. So we know that those karate schools in the 70s, 80s, even early 90s, those schools were pretty. They taught like good. They taught the karate that actually worked, not that washed up stuff, that watered down stuff that they start teaching later on in the 90s and 2000s. Like back then in those karate schools, you actually had to know how to fight. It wasn't just about practicing katas and doing bunkai all day long. Um, Milk says Russia mobilized half of its nuclear program and has moved a lot of launch platforms and warheads close to the Ukraine border. Yeah, because of everything, because of all of the stuff that happened, like in the 90s and 2000s, like we kept putting NATO facilities along the border, and they kept saying, "Look, no, don't. We see it as a threat putting NATO right on our border." The best thing they were doing was at one time they had actually thought about asking Russia to join NATO, which would have been brought us a lot closer to peace than just putting stuff on their border. And what made it worse was saying they were going to put that in Ukraine or add Ukraine to NATO, which is basically like putting NATO right on its border. Of course, they're going to feel some type of way about that. Like, again, I'm not saying that vindicates everything they have done, but why antagonize them? It just didn't make sense, especially when in the mid to late 90s we were moving to a close relationship with Russia at the time, and that got fucked up with the stuff that we started doing in the 2000s. But whatever, again, above my pay grade, so I don't know. Eric Lapointe says, I agree on the Civil War comment. Yeah, to me, there's so many ethnic Russians in Ukraine, and there's ethnic Ukrainians in Russia. Like, some of Putin's family members are ethnic Ukrainian. Like, to me, it's a civil war. So it seems like a sunk cost to get involved and to continue getting involved. We sent them $60 billion as part of that thing that Congress worked out a few weeks ago, and then they tried to placate us about all the hundreds of billions of dollars we sent to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan by saying, well, we're also going to make it so that now that airlines will refund you for delayed flights and shit like that. Yeah, that's cool and all, but that doesn't that's to me that was like a distraction from the fact that they just literally gave out hundreds of billions of dollars to a bunch of fucking countries that could have been used here. America first. Um, Mark Farrell says London, England is the same. The worst part about the UK is we don't look after our own people but get involved in other people's wars while the homeless here don't get any help. Right. So I understand as far as government is concerned that each year there's a part of the budget broken down just for um, money that they give to countries as part of our whatever you want to call it, and it's actually a small part of the budget compared to everything else. Like the biggest part of the budget comes from defense spending, Social Security, and like I think the two biggest thing, I don't know about the UK and the US, in America, like the biggest parts of our budget every year isn't actually the money we give to other countries. The biggest comes from our military and defense spending budget and like Social Security and stuff like that. Very little. Most of the things that people complain about, like I'm complaining about now, like money we give to foreign states and money we give for like space programs and research and development. It's actually a very small chunk of the budget. But to us, for the average person, seeing $100 billion, that's still a lot. I mean, because most people can't in their head fathom $1 trillion from $1 billion from $1 million. They're completely different. But if you were to stack that money like vertically, like $1 trillion would go up to the moon and back again. That's how much money that is that we're spending. So Disney Star Wars watered down. Yeah, absolutely. It's not just that it's just watered down. It's like they fundamentally don't understand the mythos. Like Star Wars was always about the Skywalker family. Like I said, Lucas made that pretty clear. Like it literally says the adventures of Luke Skywalker on the novelization of the original film. And even if you want to get off into the spin-off stuff like Clone Wars and stuff like, and I love the Clone Wars. Like, other than the original trilogy, Clone Wars is one of my favorite parts of Star Wars, still under, which is still part of what I call George Lucas Star Wars. Everything before 2012, when he sold it to Disney Star Wars, is basically George Lucas Star Wars, which includes the expanded universe, novels, and comics, and video games as well as the some of the TV shows like the droids and Ewoks that came out in the 80s, and those horrible Ewok made for television movies. All that stuff you can find on Disney Plus. But I've watched most of the Disney made Star Wars stuff, and most of it sucked, except for Rogue One. Rogue One was really good. Mandalorian, the first two seasons. The third season, they got into their little identity politics bullshit. They couldn't help themselves. They had to ruin something good like The Mandalorian by doing what Disney does best to it, right? But Mandalorian, the first two seasons, Rogue One, the new Marvel comics, Star Wars, those are still good. But I really don't rock with Disney Star Wars like I do with the original George Lucas Star Wars. And like I said, they just misunderstand the mythos. Like, they fundamentally misunderstand Jedi. I even get into disagreements with other so-called Star Wars fans that don't understand Jedi, because there was a thing that came out only in online communities where they start talking about gray Jedi. I did a few videos on that. There are no gray Jedi. Like, people think the Jedi are emotionless, like people. No, they're not. Like, and like they experience emotions and stuff like that. They're not these emotionless soldiers that only do their duty. Like, I don't know where that came from. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of the Jedi, and some of the people who make stuff now misunderstand them as well. The difference is they didn't let their passions dictate you know their better judgment. But there's no gray Jedi. There's no there's no in between people. There's many different Force users in the Star Wars or the Skywalker galaxy besides the Sith and the Jedi, but there was no gray Jedi order. There was only the Jedi and there was the Sith. There were other Force users, but none of them were called gray Jedi. And people some of the people who talk about Jedi now in these new movies or in series like Ahsoka just fundamentally misunderstand Jedi. Like, it just sucks. Oh, Eric Lapointe says, and does the UK come knocking on your door because of a post on the internet, or am I wrong? Um, so someone for the British Isles will have to answer that. um, I'm gonna let that show that comment. Another person said I look like Don Cheadle. Coinace 575 says you look like that black Iron Man from the second Iron Man movie. Again, I don't see the Don Cheadle thing, but like I said, it must be the nose. But I think he's like half a shade darker than me, at least when I'm not tan. I get darker than this in the summer, but I don't see the comparison to Don Cheadle. If you guys think so, so be it. Someone needs to remake Flash Gordon. Let's not touch a classic. I mean, if it was cheesy, but because it was the 80s, it was literally came out in what, 1980 or 1981. Of course, it was gonna be cheesy, but it's so good. Like, as a little kid, I must have watched the movie like 100 times. I mean, you had Queen doing the music for it, like Queen. You know what I'm saying? You know, if guys, if you don't know the rock band Queen, I don't know what to tell you. You need to get off this live stream, go on YouTube and look up Bohemian Rhapsody, right? But the you and like if they did a remake, they better use Queen's original music for it from the soundtrack. But I don't. I guess they could. I guess they could remake it because it's so. It was so long ago that people won't remember. But Gen X folks like myself, they're gonna remember, and we're gonna, we complain about everything. But 1980 is old enough that they could remake a remake, but I'm not sure they should. Like a lot of stuff they remade from the 80s just suck. Like, and all of them seem to have Colin Farrell in it for some reason. Like, well, not all of them, but like they remade RoboCop, that sucked. They re What was the other one Colin Farrell did that they remade and it was bad? Oh, they also did. They had remade Conan and used the guy um, who plays Aquaman to play Arnold. I mean, to play Arnold's part in Conan. That that flopped. Um, oh, it was Judge Dredd that Colin Farrell did. They remade that. The original Judge Dredd wasn't that good, but still, the remake. I don't even know anyone who watched the remake of Judge Dredd. So I don't. I'm pretty right now, especially in this era of Hollywood where everything has to be identity politics. I think they would ruin the Flash. Honestly, I don't think they should touch it. They wanted to do it prior to like 2013, maybe, but I don't see them remaking Flash, and it would be good um in today's political climate. I think they would ruin it unless it was done overseas. Oh, Eric Point says I wrote that too fast. I meant, do the cops come knocking because of posts on the internet? Uh, I hope not. Like I said, I don't know the UK, but I know they don't have the same First Amendment rights we do have here. Other than that, if someone watching the live stream from the UK wants to answer him, Mark Farrell did answer, said not really, bro, but the police here are hated. They're hated everywhere. That's not unique. That's not unique. In every country I go to, people hate their police. However, I know there's at least a few LEOs or law enforcement officers who are who follow my channel. Shout out to them. I'll say this: I know you guys get hated on, but we need you. Like, chaos would be afoot if there wasn't police, and some of you guys won't know that until stuff goes down. I remember the cognitive scientist Steven Pinker said just that in several interviews and in one of his books I read. Um, that he was a very leftist person when he lived in Canada. He was against police and stuff like that. And it only took one day when the police went on protest that the whole town just went into disarray. Like, there was shootings, muggings, break-ins. It was, and that was just like with, I think that was just a few days without police, and it was utter chaos. Could you imagine just an entire city, town, region, country just devoid of law enforcement? We can hate them, but they keep the peace. Could they do it much better? Hell yes. But that's more of a that's a bureau that's a more of a bureaucratic issue. So shout out to law enforcement if there's any people who watch me in law enforcement. I'm pretty sure there are. So, you know. Wiseau says Uncle Luke, aka Luke Skywalker, was sued by George Lucas over the name. History is what? Luke the rapper was sued by George Lucas? That's I never heard of that, honestly. Now I know that George Lucas has been litigious on a lot of stuff, but I've never heard that he sued um Uncle Luke from the rap crew, Two Live Crew, about his name. I guess it didn't work because he still uses it. I've even seen him perform at at Howard's homecoming. You see everybody at Howard's homecoming, right? Only bad cops are hated in my area. Exactly, same here. Well, some people just hate cops reflexively just because of their political leanings, whereas others, like myself, only hate those who are bad. I can't say an entire group of people are bad just by virtue of their the job that they do, because there's a lot of bad ones who do it. Because it would be the same about the military. Military and law enforcement very similar in that aspects. Like they law enforcement and the military attract certain personalities, which but that doesn't mean that everyone is like that authoritarian sort of type of personality. So Javante says I could beat this guy with one hand. I don't know if he's referring to me, but again, you can try. Again, challenging me to a fight is like, don't threaten me with a good time. I I don't see. I think some people miss people in the martial arts world know, but for folks outside of the martial arts world, they don't understand that people who fight don't have to look tough to be tough. These these are the sort of idiots that couldn't do well in the intel community, because these are the folks who think people in the intel community should look like Dwayne the Rock Johnson when they're not going to look like that. How are you going to blend in to into wherever you're doing your intelligence gathering by standing out from everyone else by looking like a huge bodybuilder, tough, jacked, got a serious mug on your face? I don't have to look tough to know how to fight. I know how to fight because I have the skills to do so. So if you think I'm supposed to grimace and do all that sort of stuff to show that I'm tough, sorry, my bro. And I've met MMA guys, like none of them, when they're not training and competing, look like killers, but they are. Like they are trained killers. Same with Nakmoy and kickboxers. They're trained killers, but that don't mean they walk around with like a chip on their shoulder looking like they're gonna knock someone out all day long. That's You fundamentally don't know people if that's what you think, and it shows that you don't know how to fight. You're just a keyboard warrior. But that's yeah, that's crazy. Crazy Insanity Game says it's easy to fathom it. For example, around 5 trillion is the world's worth. No, I think it's more than $5 trillion. What are we talking about? A specific currency? Or are we talking about global currency? Because I'm pretty sure if you add it all up, it's more than 5 trillion. Like, to take for example, in America alone, like we're in like over $1 trillion in student loan debt, just in student loan debt. So there's more than $1 trillion worth of global currency. Like I said, unless you mean something more specific than that. Old Smokey says, I don't care about none of that anymore, man. I just enjoy life. What's happening is going to happen. Doesn't matter how much we bitch about it, honestly. Yeah, it's like you, I mean, worrying about things that go on outside of your control is not healthy, nor is it very useful. I agree. But we can pontificate upon things if we just want to like have these little bull sessions, right? But other than that, you're right. Yeah, crazy insanity game says, dude, the Mandalorian though, you can't lie, that was fire. It was. Like I said, I still watched the third season. It's just it wasn't good because they started making it about um what's the chick name? I forgot. From She was originally in Clone Wars, and then she was in Star Wars Rebels, and then they made a live action version of her from Mandalorian. But the first two seasons were off the chain, especially because the first season you didn't even know what was going on, and that's why the Ahsoka series was so disappointing, because the way they set Ahsoka up on Mandalorian was so good. Like she even had her little spirit animal that came from the Clone Wars, which was actually a goddess who died to bring Ahsoka back to life, and then became personified as this owl. There was sort of like her spirit animal that kept her in, intrinsically tied with the Force. And that whole episode called The Jedi in season two was like a big homage to like the old samurai films. Like they even had like ninja droids. Like the village was set up like a Japanese village from the Edo period. Um, the bad guy, I forgot her name. She's actually the daughter of Guru Dan Inosanto. For guys who don't know Dan Inosanto, he's one of the most influential martial artists in the martial arts community. He was one of the friends of Bruce Lee and carried on the JKD Jeet Kune Do uh, lineage when Bruce Lee died in 1973. He also brought Filipino martial arts to America, and you see the influence, like his daughter doing Filipino martial arts in that episode against Ahsoka. So she was way more skilled than the actress Rosario Dawson. So Rosario Dawson had to train much harder to do those scenes with with Diana Lee Inosanto for those parts. And Diana Lee Inosanto, she was Bruce Lee's goddaughter. So I enjoyed that scene immensely. And then when they brought Luke Skywalker on there, oh my god! Now they used they used a AI generated image of Luke Skywalker, but they brought the real Mark Hamill in, and then they used CGI over it. They used another actor's body and CGI'd it over him, and had brought Luke Skywalker in. Man, that was the best episode. I watched it like so many times. That was so dope. Cause when I saw this guy, when they showed this Jedi coming to rescue everyone in that season finale of season in the season two finale of Mandalorian, and he was just cloaked in a robe, and we're all looking like, that better not be Luke. Yo, that better not be Luke. And then he took the hood off at the end. I yelled. My niece probably thought I was crazy. I yelled, and then R2D2 came rolling out. That was like the best episode. That and the Jedi episode with Ahsoka. So, man, and it's like they fucked it up with the third season, but I'm still gonna watch the fourth season. I think they're gonna do it because originally they weren't gonna do a fourth season. They were just gonna tie it into a movie, but I think they're still doing a fourth season. I don't know how that's gonna go. Um, says haha, $1 million in time is 3 weeks. $1 billion in 1983, and a trillion. I don't even know 33,000 years. Crazy Insanity Game says I played the games. A lot of the scale went down. They moved on to planet combat. More we rarely see ship combat. Oh, okay. Which game? Because I haven't played any of the Star Wars games. Egon Short said was good on. I'm good. Eric Lapointe is like Queen. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, the Queen movie theme for Flash Gordon is unbeatable. Do a backflip. Oh yeah, you the guy from the Spider-Man movie. Uh, Sorry, I can't backflip. I can do cartwheel kicks. That's about it. Like the way this Sanchai does in his Muay Thai fights, the little cartwheel kick. Like he'll grab the arm and then kick the person. pretty good stuff. Why does your kind genetically enjoy chicken so much? Who's my kind? And when did chicken not be delicious? Right. Eric LaPointe says, name anyone who doesn't like chicken. I'll help. I'll help him out, Eric. I have vegans. I was once vegan in college. But I still love chicken. I just couldn't eat it because I was doing it for moral reasons. That didn't last long. But I guess if you're a vegan or just don't like chicken, I do know some people who actually, I know some black people who actually don't like chicken. I had my my stepfather's niece. I remember when she visited us in Illinois, she said she didn't like chicken. And I was looking at her crazy, like, you don't like chicken? And it wasn't a black thing, it was just the chicken is delicious thing. Like Dave Chappelle brought this up in an old stand-up long time ago. He was saying he hated eating like fried chicken like when he went to a restaurant because he said he felt like white people were just staring at him like, look at him. He loves it. and but he was like, because he was like, you ever seen something racist? And he said you don't realize it's racist until after the fact. And you were like, oh God, that was racist. And then he brought up the point about chicken, and he was like, I later thought about it. He was like, but who doesn't like chicken? He said chicken is fucking delicious. He said, but nah. He said he would go to a restaurant, and he's like, he'll look at the menu, and the guy behind the counter is like, let me guess, you want the chicken, right? And Dave Chappelle's like, yeah, that's amazing. How did you know that when I stepped into this restaurant and came up to you looking at the menu that I was going to choose the chicken? And he said the white guy just rolled his eyes like, come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Everybody knew when you come up in this here restaurant that you was going to get the chicken. It's well known that coloreds and chickens are quite fond of each other. uh, and that's what is Dave Chappelle's like funniest stand-ups. Because I don't have that. See, I don't have that with chicken. Well, actually, yeah, I do. When I would go to work and I would go to lunch, I would never order fried chicken just because of that. And even when I did get the chicken, it was like Korean style chicken at this cafe where I used to work because the people who owned it was Korean, and I was like, "Can you give me Korean style chicken with the sauce and all that?" He's like, "You know about that?" I was like, "Yeah, I know about that." He was like, "Okay," but like if like we went to like Chinese food place or something like that, I never got chicken. I mean, not fried chicken wings. I would get like maybe like General Soul chicken or orange chicken, but I wasn't getting like the wing dinner because that was just too stereotypical. And I felt like the way Dave Chappelle said, a lot of black folks feel that way when they order food. So, and I don't think I've ever eaten like watermelon in public. Like, and watermelon is delicious. I actually have a friend that's was a hip hop. Well, he still does music. His name is Bomani Arma. If people haven't heard of him in the Washington D.C. area, he calls himself the Watermelon Man because he uses it on purpose to defeat that whole stereotype about black people eating watermelon by actually having everyone eat watermelon together. Um, but it's not a stigma overseas. Like overseas, Japanese love watermelon, and I've seen other Asians that love like watermelon and stuff like that. It's only a stigma here, but I wouldn't eat it like in public, to be honest. So Mr. Mosby, do a flip. What part of the Intel community were you? I wasn't part of the Intel community. I'm not saying I was. I was saying it was just a point that I was making earlier that people who are professional fighters or people who are intel operatives aren't going to look like intel operatives or professional fighters in their day-to-day life, because why do they have to? Like I said, I'm an amateur fighter. I'm not a professional fighter, but I don't know why a person assumes I have to look a certain way to fight. You'll know by the fact that I'm fit, that that's how you would know, is how physically fit I am if we go train together, and my skill level, not by what I wear or certain things that I say or how my face looks. And similar to the Intel community, it wouldn't make sense for an Intel operative to look a certain way and stand out of the crowd, because the whole point of being Intel is to look like everyone else, not look like the so-called gray man. The gray man is a douchebag idea, because the whole point of being a gray man is to blend in with everyone else. But if you have a whole look that distinguishes you from everyone else, aka the gray man, then it's self-defeating. It's the whole reason why the whole ninja outfit is stupid. Like, well, historically speaking, there weren't real ninja, but that's a different subject. But if there were, they would just look like common peasants and farmers or samurai. Like, they're not going to stand out from everyone else, because that defeats the purpose of being a spy. And like I said, most fighters I know look pretty low key. Like when my cousin met George St. Pierre at a club or party or something in I think Miami or wherever he was, the dude was chill. Like, I don't know why people think they're gonna be huffing and puffing, looking like Conor McGregor in that shitty remake of Roadhouse. Like, that's not how most fighters look. So that was my point about the whole Intel thing. As far as my background in the military, um, I had a top secret security clearance, but I was just required for my job, because what we did was like cable installation and maintenance. But apparently that that had two parts to it. You had the part where we're basically like the Verizon of the army, where we install cable and telephone systems, you know, on the back in the Bay Area and stuff like that. But then you had the tactical side, which was signal intelligence. So that's why we had to have the top secret security clearance. But I myself didn't do anything in Intel. Um, but yeah, that's as far as that went. Ratik Vipani says, "Why does everyone saying do a flip?" It's a joke from Spider-Man: Homecoming. Sorry, my video just glitched. It's a joke from Samurai Homecoming, Vertique, where there's this black guy who's in a lot of movies and stuff. He's actually currently in the series Fallout on Amazon Prime. He tells Batman to do a backflip, and he does it. He's like, "Yeah!" It's hilarious. Um, I don't know why they're telling me to do that. I don't look like Miles Morales either, but well, there hasn't been a live action version of Miles Morales yet, anyway. But it was a whole joke about talking about martial arts and stuff like that. That people said do a backflip, and then other people saying I look like Don Cheadle, who plays um, the the best friend of Tony Stark, Iron Man, and in the MCU. Ratik says I deep fry my own chicken is amazing. That's what's up. It's not healthy, but it's good. See, I can get away with eating unhealthy stuff because I have a stringent fitness regimen I adhere to every day, or almost every day. But yeah, deep fried chicken is delicious. Usually, the way I've done it, a healthier way to fry chicken, if there's a such thing as healthy fried chicken, is the way my father taught me, which is oven fried chicken. So, you season and batter your chicken just like you're doing with deep fry, but you put it in the iron skillet in the oven. So you preheat the skillet with the grease and stuff like that, and you just stick it in the oven, flip it, it's done, and it's a lot less messy than cooking it on the stove or in a deep fryer. I think it's slightly healthier. The way I've made it healthier was the way I used to fix it in college. I didn't use like regular vegetable oil. I would use olive oil. Um, I tried to use all extra virgin olive oil, but that extra virgin olive oil burns, so I had to dilute it with regular olive oil because extra virgin olive oil burns at high at those high temperatures, so it's not good to fry food in. But I would use part of it and then some regular virgin olive oil and fry my chicken in the oven, and that comes out easy, no muss, no fuss. I gotta. I told my wife I would do that for her, but we don't have an oven in the Philippines. We only have a stovetop. So, well, no, actually, no, that's wrong. Now we have a toaster oven there, so I can try it that way. Oh, and everyone's talking about the K dot of Drizzy. So you missed the beginning of the string when because someone asked me that very thing. I said I don't really have well, Kendrick, just because I like him more lyrically than Drake. But to be honest, I said Drake has the better songs, but Kendrick is the better lyricist. But I said, of course, Drake has the better songs because he has ghostwriters, right? So I guess if you have ghostwriters, all your shit's going to be more or less fire. R.I.P. King Von. Who's that? Can someone tell me who King Von is? If that's a serious thing, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Why does someone keep saying oil up? That is mad Diddy, yo. Sorry, my East Coast accent is coming out. That's yeah. I don't. I keep getting that joke every time I do a live stream about oiling up. I'm not going to oil up. Like, no, that's crazy. Uh, have you seen the new movie Civil War? It is amazing. My favorite movie so far. I love a 24 production. Um, I, I, I seen the guy who makes the movie. He came on to the Daily Show with Jon Stewart, but the reviews have not been good. It looks. I might watch it, but I don't like it because it seems like it doesn't really take an explicit stand. Like it just kind of both side does that sort of both sidism type thing. Like it doesn't say why California and Texas have formed some alliance and go like it doesn't really the movie doesn't really make sense to me. I might check it out, but and then I was like California and Texas ally, and I was like that's a weird partnership. I was like of the states that I would see having a partnership, I would not picture California and Texas. Yeah, they're the two biggest states in the union, followed by Florida, but politically they are at extreme opposites of each other. People are leaving California to go to Texas. So I don't know. I might watch it, but it looks, to be honest, it seems cheesy. It's sort of like The Purge. Like The Purge has like under these under these undertones of politics, but it doesn't want to explicitly say what those are. So that to so to so to try to be safe, it kind of messes up the impact, so to speak, of the film because it's afraid to actually stand on its own merits and say this why the Civil War is plausible, because obviously people have talked about Civil War in the last couple of years, ever since the so-called insurrection of January 6th. And I've flipped my views on that within the last couple of years, which I've talked about in other videos, and I might talk in a future video, but not this stream. Can you follow me? I'll have to check that out after I get off the stream. I can't follow you while I'm currently streaming. I'll check it out when I get off. Luis says so handsome, complexion, eyes, teeth. Just saying. Thank you. I appreciate it. He's a rapper. Oh, King. Oh, I have heard. Okay, I have heard of him. Sorry, that's my notifications again. I have heard of him. Wait, King Von. Yeah, I forgot who that is, but now that you mention it, yeah, I have heard that name. For some reason, I was thinking he was the guy that used to do a podcast with that white chick, just pearly things. That's not the same person, right? The British guy who did a podcast with just pearly things. So anyway, I think I've gotten through most of the comments, so I'm gonna finish with the Star Wars Day, and I'm gonna call this a do pretty soon, unless I get some more comments. Sorry. So I showed you guys all my free comics. If you didn't see it, I'm gonna do that again. Here's one, Absolute Power by DC Comics for Free Comic Book Day. And a Giant Universe showing Megatron, the G1 Megatron. G1, for those who don't know, means Generation 1, the original ones that came out in the 80s. The original Transformers were based on toys made in Japan by Takara. They were then licensed by Hasbro in America and renamed Transformers, and they were supposed to be sentient robots, whereas the original versions made by Takara for Japan were supposed to be more like vehicles piloted by humans, like Mobile Suit Gundam or like Robotech. Spider-Man Ultimate Universe, because they're bringing back the Ultimate Universe and Marvel and doing some stuff with them. A new thing with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by IDW Comics. It says, who is Night Watcher? So I don't know if this is going to be one of the four turtles or a new turtle. I don't know if it's going to tie into the Last Ronin, because they're doing a sequel to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Last Ronin. Spoiler alert, in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Last Ronin, the last turtle surviving is actually Michelangelo. It wasn't Raphael, wasn't Leonardo, wasn't Donatello. It was Michelangelo, because he was always depending on which version of the franchise, was considered to be the most talented of all four. It's just that you didn't know because he was always so jokey, right? I got someone who says Gundam. I'm sorry I can't pronounce your name, sir, because I don't know um kanji. But it's kind of fortuitous that you came on, because I was just about to show my other free comic book. Actually a free manga. I'm sorry. Let's not confuse the two. This is a manga of One Piece. This is Ace's story, which is I think it gives the backstory to Ace. Also, if you haven't seen that arc in One Piece, it is awesome. Like, whoever writes One Piece is a great writer. Like, I wish some of the comic book writers here in America were as talented as the ones here, as the manga writers over in Japan. And of course, Star Wars for Free Comic Book Day, since it was also Star Wars Day. I told my friend, I was like, they better release a Star Wars comic on Free Comic Book Day, since they intersect on the same day. It would be obscene if they didn't. Of course, they didn't disappoint, and they actually had the boy Luke and the man Anakin right there side by side with the two different lightsabers. Although for some reason Luke has a yellow lightsaber, and of course Darth Vader, being a Sith, has a red one. For those who don't know, the color of the lightsaber is actually dependent on the type of Jedi or Force user you are. There's different types of lightsabers, but the majority of them are powered by kyber crystals in this Star Wars universe. The kyber crystals don't emit any particular color. The color is based on their the Force user's connection to the Force. So typically blue, which was very common, was for folks who were like strong with being duelists with their lightsaber. Those who had a green lightsaber, like Luke later had when he formed his own lightsaber, is because they have a strong connection to the Force. That's why they have a green lightsaber. So Yoda had a green lightsaber. Qui-Gon Jinn had a green lightsaber. Luke had a green lightsaber. And sometimes your connection to the Force may change over time, but the color of the lightsaber will still be based on your connection to the Force at the time you created your lightsaber. So although Obi-Wan Kenobi in his later years was stronger in the Force, as a Padawan, he was more of a headstrong guy who preferred being a good duelist, which is why he had a blue lightsaber. The yellow or white lightsabers came from the Jedi. I forgot what they call it, the guards or whatever. These people were sort of strong with the Force, but they kind of blended their understanding of the Force with like nature and also being able to be strong duelists. And apparently, they were the most feared by people like Palpatine, were the Force users who commanded like the yellow lightsabers. Then you had other colors come about, like Mace Windu had a purple lightsaber, which is, we know that purple is a mixture of blue and red, right? And that's because Mace Windu had a sort of connection to the dark side of the Force. He wasn't a dark side user, but he could tap into the dark side when he wanted to, without without being consumed by the dark side of the Force. That's why he had a purple lightsaber, and that's why he was the only one allowed to practice his lightsaber form, which tapped into the dark side. Other people in the Jedi Academy were not allowed to learn his form because could easily lead to a person falling to the dark side. But he was able to do that. And lastly, I have a comic book that wasn't part of Free Comic Book Day, but I bought. That came out October last year. Captain America #1, which is a reboot of the series. Because the comic books typically do reboots so that new readers can jump into it, and they don't have to read through a backlog of the last 60 plus years of comic books to get to where the current point is right now in the comic books. Sort of like pro wrestling and other things, right? Louis says we should go back to comic book stores as a social meeting place, like in a Big Bang Theory. Yeah, and I was just talking about that earlier. I was saying, me and my friend, when we went to the comic book store, Third Eye, yesterday, he was debating whether to buy a manga called Demon Slayer from them or from Amazon, and he decided he was going to do it from Amazon. But he was asking me whether he should ask them whether they could beat the price, and I'm like, don't do that. That's unfair to a comic book store to try to ask them to price match the discounts offered from Amazon, because they're always going to lose out in that way. And anytime I find like an old mom and pop bookstore, it doesn't even have to be a comic book store. It could just be a regular old bookstore. I'll patronize it. Like the last time I found actually a old fashioned mom and pop bookstore, I actually found the comic book trade paperback. Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe is a whole storyline where Deadpool, from another universe, not the main Earth 616 Marvel Universe. And people are gonna say, why is it called Earth 616? It's called Earth 616 just because it originally wanted to be Earth 666 to show that our actual world is the worst of all possible worlds in the multiverse. So they called it Earth 616, but they just took one of the sixes and made it a one, so it doesn't sound like demonic. But that's the main universe in Marvel, Earth 616. This wasn't that Deadpool. It was a Deadpool from another universe, but you don't learn that until the sequel, when they did a second Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, that he was actually tricked into thinking that he needs to kill the Marvel Universe, and he goes out killing every superhero in the Marvel Universe, and then he jumps out of the pages of the comic book and kills the writers and artists too, which is hilarious. I got that and some other stuff from a mom and pop bookstore, so that was cool. And I love Big Bang Theory, by the way, as well. That's one of my favorite sitcoms that came out in the last couple of years. Mr. Rodriguez Golfing says, "Who would win in a fight? No lightsabers, no force, no Jedi tricks." But between Grievous or Darth Maul, um, I don't know. Now, it's obvious that Darth Maul, being played by this stunt actor who's a great martial artist, is more talented in fighting. And like after Darth Maul was resurrected in Clone Wars, it showed just how much tenacity he has for living and how dangerous he is. So I couldn't say. I might bet on Darth Maul, but I can't say. There's something nostalgic about reading through comics, like reading through vinyl. Exactly. Like I'm maybe I'm older, so I don't know if millennials or Gen Z or even the kids Gen Alpha are going to continue reading hard print books like we do now. Like they'll probably just read it mostly on digital screens. For me, it takes the fun away from reading something online than reading it. Well, I don't mind reading articles online, but reading books or comics online just takes the fun away. Like the smell, the smell of the print on a new comic book, the smell of a freshly printed book, like a real book from the comic book store is unbeatable. Then like you have the traditional books for those who don't know. You had these old school books where you had to cut open the book between pages, which is where the whole pen knife comes from, like the old fashioned pocket knives. They used to call them pen knives because you literally had to cut the pages open. Those are the old school books, and they still make those. You can those 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 are just great for collecting in themselves. And I don't think having an online library of books will ever defeat actually having like a physical media like this. I even keep physical media of my favorite movies. Like I have DVDs of all my favorite movies, like of course Star Wars and Indiana Jones, Star Trek 2, 3, and 4, Ghostbusters, Transformers, the animated movie, Karate Kid, um, and a bunch of other movies. A few MCU movies like Captain America: The Winter Soldier, The Wolverine from Fox, which was like the only good one. Um, Stuff like that. So I'm always going to be for physical media over digital media, but I use both. But if it's something I want to keep, I'm going to buy the physical media. Yes, like Mr. Rodriguez Golfing says, there's nothing more nostalgic than the smell of the paper and ink. Definitely. And who knows, some of these things may become worthwhile down the line. Um, like I said, the original comic books like Superman, someone just recently bought that at an auction for like, I think it was like $2 or $3 million because it was printed in 1938. And comic books back then were just, most kids would read it and then they would just throw it away. And then when the Second World War came out, they were actually telling kids to donate their books and stuff for like, so they could recycle the paper for like for the war. And so like a lot of these things went away. So the ones that were left were so rare that they're worth a lot of money. Or if there's a certain bubble for a particular franchise, it can be worth a lot of money. Like for instance, I've mentioned this in other videos. Like The Walking Dead came out in 2003 in the comic books, but by the time the TV show became big, um, 10 years ago, that comic book, if you had the first printing of the 2003 Volume One Walking Dead, it was worth $75,000. And that was just from 2003. Can you imagine something printed in 1938 that someone's great grandfather held on to? Like I said, those have sold. The first Superman, first Batman, First Wonder Woman. These have sold for millions of dollars on auctions and on eBay. It's the equivalent of digital download games and hard copies. The physical copies are always top tier. Exactly. Exactly. Louis says, "Wow, easy money." Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't remember in 2003 seeing The Walking Dead, but it wouldn't have, it probably wouldn't appeal to me like a cowboy in a zombie apocalypse. But to just think that I could have bought that in 2003, held on to it, and then in 2013 it would have been worth $75,000. Man, that'd have been crazy. I have a few collectibles in my collection. I've shown it in other videos, but as far as I know, none of them are worth anything because I don't have any original printings of anything. All my old comics from like the 30s, 40s, and 50s are reprints and facsimile reprints. Facsimile reprints are different from like second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth such printings where they printed how they are printed. The facsimile reprints are made to look like the original version that came out as it did, even with the original advertisements, and those are so cool. That's why I buy them. It's good. It's like looking at a time capsule. Like when I read like an old comic book, just a facsimile reprint of something that came out in the '60s, and you see these old advertisements, and you look at the stuff they used to sell to kids, which cannot be legally sold today. Like they used to sell kids like dangerous things. And you just look at the old ads, or you see the old Stanley editorials and those old '60s Marvel comics, or even further back to like the '30s and '40s, the old comic books that came out back then, and you see the facsimile reprints of these old ads, and just the more like arcane way that they used to that conversational English used to be. It's cool. It's really cool. But I I have like I said, I have a few collectibles, but I don't think I'll have anything that's worth over $1,000. Probably not anything worth over a couple of $100, to be honest. At least not yet. Nicolas Cage, I didn't know he was a huge comic book collector. I mean, he would definitely have the money to do so. Um, I don't know if you were on my stream earlier, Rodriguez, when I was mentioning Francis Ford Coppola was a mentor to George Lucas before they had a falling out, and I was saying that I think the falling out between Anakin and Obi-Wan was an analog to George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola. But you know that Nicolas Cage is his uncle. I think Francis Ford Coppola is Nicolas Cage uncle, I think. But he never used his last name Coppola because he wanted to get by in Hollywood without being a nepo baby. Before the term nepo baby had came out, he had decided he wanted to make it through Hollywood without pulling strings from using his last name as a Coppola, as the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola. But he's his nephew, or I think nephew, either nephew or grandson, something like that. But he's related directly to Francis Ford Coppola, but he never used his last name as a way to get into the Hollywood industry. Unlike other people like Michael Douglas, who was the son of Kirk Douglas, or other a bunch of other folks. But anyway, I think I'm gonna wrap this up, guys. It's been like 2 hours. Again, uh, if you missed Star Wars Day or Free Comic Book Day yesterday, you can still go to your local comic book stores, and some of them will still have leftovers of stuff that because they probably have so much. They ship so much product to these stores for Free Comic Book Day. They usually have a lot left over. Also, the public library gets those comic books on Free Comic Book Day too. I don't think a lot of people know that because this has been a few times that I missed Free Comic Book Day, and I would go to the library and pick up some of these free comic books. So for some of you, especially if you got kids and maybe you don't have a comic book store in your close to where you live, go to the public library. They will also have those free comic books as well. Thanks Rodriguez. Thanks for subbing. I appreciate it. So unless guys you have any other questions, I'm gonna skedaddle. I'm gonna go eat and work out. and just chill and talk to Mrs. Contrarian, because we do have a video coming out for you guys. She wants me to do a reaction video to Taylor Swift because she knows she's a huge Swiftie, as I've mentioned numerous times, but I'm not. So she wants to get my reaction to a song that she's randomly picked out. She hasn't told me what song it was, and it's not going to be for a fortnight because she knows I've already listened to it and I like it, and she was surprised. But I was like, of course I like it. Like I like the dude she does the duet with um damn, what's his name? But anyway, I once we get it together, she and I are gonna do like a reaction video. She might actually be in the video with me. We'll see. But if not, she's gonna she's gonna at least play the video for me, and we're gonna get my reaction to it. And Mr. Rodriguez Golfing says some of Nick Cage's best pieces, in my opinion, are Fantastic Four #1, Green Lantern #1, and Detective Comics #38. But he has so many. You're talking about the originals, because I have because you're not talking about the reboots. You're talking about the ones that came out. Fantastic Four #1 that came out in like 1962 or 61, something like that. Green Lantern one. And Green Lantern one. Are you talking about the original Green Lantern from the 40s, or are you talking about the Green Lantern with Hal Jordan? Because you got the Silver Age Hal Jordan Green Lantern, then you got the original um, Green Lantern, who is Alan, I forgot his name. Then Detective Comics #38, which is the first appearance of Robin, right? The first appearance of Dick Grayson as Robin. He has the originals. Oh, well, again, Nick Cage has money, so I'm sure he does have the originals. That's something he can pass on to his children or donate. Um, there was a place here in Baltimore. Uh, I think it was Diamond Comics. They had a place downtown. There was like a sort of like a museum for like not just comics, but a lot of pop culture stuff. And they had one of the original first printings of, I think, Detective Comics #27, the first appearance of Batman, down there behind like a glass case. But unfortunately, that museum closed down. So that's the only place I've seen that had like one of the originals, like original comic books. Yeah, Alan. He said Alan Ladd. Okay. Also, it's so the original Green Lantern from 1941, I think that came out. I'm not. I think it was like 1941, 1942, something like that. That's cool. So I didn't know Nick Cage was a comic book nerd. That's what's up. And of course, he played Johnny Cage, the first of the Ghost Riders. And I know I think they're gonna bring Ghost Rider into the MCU, but we don't know which version they're gonna use. They had one version of Ghost Rider in Agents of Shield, but Agents of Shield is no longer considered part of the MCU. As part of they considered it part of an alternate timeline, and they used the Latino version of Ghost Rider. And of course, there's been multiple Ghost Riders, but Nick Cage did get to play um, Johnny. Not. I'm sorry. Not. I called him Johnny Cage. I'm sorry, Johnny, whatever his name is, the original Ghost Rider. But that movie was horrible, and the fact you had someone like in their 40s playing like a kid that's supposed to be like 18 was not believable. But all right, I'm gonna wrap it up, guys. Again, this was about Free Comic Book Day and Star Wars Day. If you missed Free Comic Book Day, go to your local comic book store. I'm sure they're gonna have leftovers you can get for free, or you can go to the public library. Free Comic Book Day always hits the public libraries as well, so you can get free stuff there for you and the kiddos. Because they had a bunch of comics just for the kids too, like Young Jedi Adventures, and a bunch of other stuff that I didn't get because my niece and nephew, grew out of that sort of stuff now. So even though I count my nephew reading some manga, so that's good. Cheers, Henry Van Dyke. What's up? Also, Star Wars Day. Check out some Star Wars stuff. Like, of course, Disney Plus has all that stuff. it's behind a paywall, so if you don't, if you don't have Disney Plus, I mean, you could try a BitTorrent site if you want to watch that stuff, or if you have basic cable, I'm pretty sure you can see some of the Star Wars stuff. I watched Attack of the Clones yesterday. The Phantom Menace is out in theaters right now for the 25th anniversary, which I did. I went to go see that in the movies when it originally came out in 1999. I actually took my father to go see it, so that's out in theaters. But I'm not going. I don't know if I'm going to watch it because this Phantom Menace was like the worst of the prequels. The only part worth watching was the third act when Qui Gon and Obi Wan fight Darth Maul. But the rest of the movie was a snore. um, but they also sell this huge RTD2 popcorn bucket. I've heard at the movies. But in any case, I ranted long enough, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening. If you're overseas, enjoy the rest of your day. Um, that's all I gotta say. May the force be with you, all you scruffy nerf herders. Thanks, Louise. Bye, guys.